Good afternoon. Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Journey Live. I'm Natalie Fairchild. I almost said my maiden name. I'm the heart, and here's my co-host, Martin Nochez, the Brainiac.
How you
Um,
doing?
Good. It's October. It's the beginning of fourth quarter.
Favorite time of the
Craziness.
year.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah, good. So super excited about what we're talking about today because small business can be challenging, hard, overwhelming, difficult, exhilarating, fun, all of that. But sometimes we just don't know what we don't know, and we need the resources, and they are right in our cities, and lots of things that can help us. So we've got Janet Kenefsky here. She's serving as the VP of Operations at the Greater Vancouver Chamber. She is a powerhouse, a badass woman. She plays a pivotal role in guiding Southwest Washington's oldest and most influential business organization, wow, towards achieving its strategic ambitions. And boy, have they ever. Since Janet has been on board, they have been doing some incredible things to create more resources for this community. But she's also going to be talking about as a whole. And, whether you're in New York or here in Vancouver, Washington, what you can look for with your local chamber, and yeah, how they can help you grow your business and not just networking. So
Sure.
um,
Let's bring Janet in.
let's bring her in. Hey,
Hi,
Janet.
Janet.
Hi.
So good to have you. We've been
Thanks.
excited for this one. We've planned it for a little bit. I know your schedule's busy, so I so appreciate you making it here. It means a lot to us.
Yeah.
So as we were saying, when a lot of people think of the chamber, they think of business after hours,
Mhm.
appetizers, wine, maybe a free raffle, and some
Mhm.
connections.
Yeah. Yeah. Or ribbon cuttings
Or
or
ribbon
yeah.
cuttings or things like that. And it's so much more than that.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, we wanted to talk to you about a little bit about, what people can look at their chamber for as far as resources and
Mhm.
and what's happening. What are you seeing in the world today?
Yeah. Oh, well, let's talk about why chambers even exist. Who are we? What are we? There used to be, you go into business and you knew what your chamber of commerce is, but over the years, slowly and slowly, with the next generations, they're not always as connected to their chamber of commerce, and so we are one of the oldest organizations in town. We're a business association. We were formed in 1890, so we
Wow.
have a couple of years under our belt, but like chambers of commerce around the country, we're there to protect business, advocate for business, and make sure that our regions are thriving and prosperous. And so when we started looking at, okay, chambers of the early 1700s or late 1700s when they were formed, it was to protect commerce, maybe certain acts that were coming down, support with legislation and really try and get things done. But it was around the agricultural arena is where we really focused, right? So
Right.
where do we talk about how many heads of cattle and what are we going to sell and what does the weather look like and the crops and whatnot? That was commerce. And so it continued to grow, and organizations and businesses needed more and more of a voice. But that's not always the forte of the business community. They're focused on running a business, and you talked about it in your opener. Like, you don't know what you don't know, but you're just focused on oftentimes just staying alive.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we have businesses that are forming businesses. A chef, I love food, I should open a restaurant. I'm
Right.
an artist, I should open a gallery. And then
Right.
we go, what happened? Like, there's a business side to this that I didn't expect. And what we want to do is make sure that we have those opportunities that we'll talk about in a little bit on. Let's get to that information before we start the business. Get the entrepreneurs ready, get your foundation set, and then we can make sure that we're resilient for the future in business, and that we're not taking it day by day, wondering if we're going to be around or not.
For
Right.
sure. But it looks like there's a perception of the chambers that has been evolving in time. Right? There was a time where, like you said, it was commerce in the strictest sense of the word.
Right.
It was a time where the chambers exceeded in being advocates legislatively, and they were just basically being uh, being the interim between businesses and the government.
Right.
There's a time that it became more about networking and sort of
Right.
getting to know who. And I feel like all chambers have evolved into this place of like, well, now they're like really a wealth of resources for
Mhm.
local businesses. And in my line of work and in our line of work here, uh, we are about dispelling myths a lot.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And one of the biggest myths that I resist is that being in business, being an entrepreneur is lonely.
Yeah.
You know, it could be, but a lot of stuff. There's a lot of resources, a lot of people around.
Mhm.
That's for me the biggest skill of having this conversation.
Yeah.
Martin, we're having a hard time hearing you. Is it going in and out for you, Janet?
It
A bit?
is.
Yeah.
So while he
Yeah, go ahead.
figures that, I'll let me
Yeah.
address that because there are, if we say it in the chamber industry, if you've seen one chamber, you've seen one chamber, right? So we're all very different, and we serve different communities, different sizes, different commerce sections. Some are located in manufacturing sectors, so they might focus on manufacturing or high tech. Some are located in tourist towns, so they have an influx. So mostly in the hospitality sector, and they focus on different things. They might not get it so much into advocacy. When you're working in some of the rural towns or the smaller towns, there are some things that are a lot. They take a lot of our time behind the scenes, time, energy, staff, manpower, a lot of community involvement. That's some of the pillars that we work on. So when we look at our legislative, our advocacy, we spend around 40% of our time on advocacy related work. And that is, let's make sure that the policies and legislations that are being proposed by our community, our legislators, don't have unintended consequences for the business community. Because sometimes we don't
Yeah.
think about it. A lot of the tax base is our business community, right? So we have a new tax that we need or money that we need. Hey, just add a little something to the business. Whoa, hold on. No, we have to understand, and not a lot of people understand the levels of taxation that might happen at the business level that have unintended consequences. So we spend a lot of time there. If you're a small rural chamber, you might have half a staff, and they're focused on just keeping the lights on. They're not going to be spending
Mhm.
a lot of time on the advocacy, and that's understandable. So they'll bring in partners or maybe other organizations to help them out. Then we have regional chambers that are like the Greater Vancouver Chamber. We're a regional chamber, and we focus only on business to business. So we have a great community here. We have a visitors a tourist department, right? Visit Vancouver, USA, Visit Vancouver, Washington. They're amazing, and they handle that. We have organizations that do parades. They handle that. We don't work on 4th of July, fireworks parades. They're amazing, and we need them for the community, but that's not where a chamber's focus is on. Chambers, because we have Chamber of Commerce, we focus on that commerce. And so regional organizations like ours, chambers, oftentimes have the resources and the people in order to implement different programming that oftentimes our smaller counterparts who do amazing work just don't have the resources there. So that's where there can be some overlap. And then we have state chambers. So every state has a state chamber association that works really hard on some of the top issues at the state level. So in Washington State, a lot of times they'll be spending time with Amazon and Starbucks and Boeing and AT&T and the large guys because there's a lot of legislation that impacts them. We work at the local level regionally. So
Okay.
you're right, Martin. When we talk about what does the chamber look like, we love celebrating business. It's business. We're a chamber of commerce. So we love celebrating business. And we do that by welcoming them into the community or welcoming them into the chamber membership. And oftentimes that's a ribbon cutting. That's a celebration. Sometimes it's a knock on the door and we go and say hello. But that's what you'll see on social media a lot, especially with chambers across the country. But I would guesstimate where it's probably less than 3% of what we do here at the chamber. It just seems to be most visible, right? So
Right.
Right.
there's a lot going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, and I think that that's a great opportunity to. By the way, can you hear me any better?
Mhm.
Great.
Try to fix it. So I feel like it's a great opportunity for the type of people that we talk to. Right in our audience, there's a lot of people who are maybe thinking about starting a business.
Okay.
They're fresh, having started something,
Yeah.
or they're like in the midst of their first couple of years.
Mhm.
So, for someone like that, what should be their first couple of steps in getting to know their area, their local resources?
knock on the door, come on over, say hi to the chamber, sit down with us, give us an opportunity to get to know you. What we want to do is make sure that we know what keeps you up at night, or what are you looking for? What are you trying to solve? Now, a lot of people think that we're the city, so they're asking about parking tickets and more parking. We can't help you with that, but we can pass along those conversations and make sure that if we hear that over and over, we know that's an issue, and we're going to elevate that with
Okay.
the city and the departments. Okay.
So, so you're
Mhm.
not a government agency, right?
We are not. Very good question.
Let's start putting that
That's right.
in bullet points, right? You're not
Yes.
a government agency.
Mhm.
Are you a non-for-profit? Are you a
Yes.
private organization? What are
Mhm.
you?
We are a nonprofit organization. So we're originally in Chambers of Commerce, our 501c6s. And that allows us, one, we're not charitable organization. We're a 501c6 classification that gives us an opportunity for advocacy and some work on the legislative level, which is what nonprofit charitable organizations are asked not to do with their C3. But the chamber did form, there was a need for us. So we did form a foundation arm 2 years ago in order to help some of those programs in areas that kind of teeter the line, but work more in our youth entrepreneurship and educational aspects. But you're right. We're nonprofit. We are funded solely by memberships and other organizations and some government funding, depending on what the program is. And one of those is specifically our entrepreneurship program. So when we look at a chamber, we're made up of a big mix. And this is what really works well is we have small mom and pops. We have entrepreneurs. We have professionals who are thinking, I spent 30 years at my company. I might want to do something. I've been wanting to go out on my own. Can I do it? You have people that
Yeah.
you can come and talk to, and we can talk about that. And then we have really large companies and publicly traded companies. And it takes that ecosystem in order to support a business community. So if you're a large organization, you might say, hey, I might not need the chamber. Yes, you do. Your employees do. Your base does. You need them to go to restaurants and retail and have a thriving
Mhm.
community and good parks and good relationships and even a population of workforce, right? So so we serve all different levels of industries and companies, and then people within those organizations. We try to build programming and value for each one of them.
And just sitting down and meeting with you when we met, I don't know, last year or something, it was just a wealth of information, of contacts, what's happening in the area. It was so fun
Mhm.
to learn because the chamber usually knows the happenings
Yeah,
of what's going on in the city. And
yeah.
then also just, you finding out what my needs were or my goals, and then really connecting the dots, and like,
Mhm.
you need to meet this person, you need to meet that person.
Yes.
And I have to tell you, some of those contacts you've made for me, I've been able to help them, or now we're in a women's group that's based out
Mhm.
of Denver, and
Yes.
it's just like
Yeah.
compounds, which is so great. So for a lot of people who are small business owners right
Mhm.
now that seem to be our listeners, what are some resources that people can expect from their chamber? And of course, we can talk about what you guys are doing, because I know you're doing so much locally.
Right. I would say first one, yes, get to know your chamber, walk in. We're all going to be a little bit different, but there's going to be a need to understand the resources. And if they don't have it, then they might have it in a little bit if they know that there's a need. So our chamber has, for example, a program for entrepreneurs, startups, small businesses called the Business Pod. It's Pathways to Opportunity and Development. And we've all had a form of entrepreneurship training over the years in one fashion or another. A lot of chambers are grant dependent. We are too, oftentimes, for some of these larger programs like this, so that we can offer them for free. But we went through the pandemic at the Greater Vancouver Chamber, and we looked at what can we do for our community. And the county had actually, Clark County, like counties all across the country, provided the chamber an opportunity to disseminate a grant. The grant was approximately $6 million. And we decided, how do we make a big impact for those that were hardest affected at the beginning? That was providing $30,000 grants to brick and mortar businesses and retail restaurants, those that line our main streets, and childcare providers.
Mhm.
So when we did that, we took in applications and we had 700 flood in. Mind you, 30,000 only got us to around 215 applications. So we cut it off at 700 going, great, there's a huge need. Now let's review those applications. We were being very basic. Let's say we need your profit and loss statements. We needed your Secretary of State, just log in and give us your B&O taxes. We'll be able to disseminate like the information and compare what was happening to you now versus what happened in 2019. And we would pay the difference. conference, up to $30,000. Well, when we started looking at that application and the information, it was very apparent these companies were hurting, but they were hurting even before the pandemic. And it was clear when you're looking at their financials, if they had financials, a lot of them weren't tracking their financials. A lot of our nonprofits who were also eligible didn't have financial statements approved by their boards. A lot of our people didn't even know how to log into their Secretary of State, didn't know their UBI, which is a state tax ID, your federal ID. All of that made going through a pandemic as a small business added insult to injury, right? So we started looking at that going, okay, we've got some work to do because we have companies that are lining our main streets that aren't having financial controls, that are going 4 days into a pandemic, worried about losing their entire business. The business community, the Chamber of Commerce, we need to step up, and we need to make sure that we have a program that's built to kind of train people from foundation, legal formation, taxes, purposes, like, okay, how am I affected? Should I be an LLC, a B Corp, S Corp? What am I and why? And so we formed the business pod so that we can reach out to companies and say, go through workshops one-on-one. We have intakes that you do. We want to find out if you're only worried about marketing, we're going to do an intake and go, okay, we're going to go back to the financial part a little bit so that we can start on the foundational basics. So if you think you have the marketing and you need the financials, great. We're still going to talk about both. So it makes it a really great conversation for us to be able to one-on-one meet with our entrepreneurs. You have an idea what's next so that we're not finding you when you're telling the community or the Columbian or the newspaper you're closing your doors. We have like a moment of silence around here when we see a company that's down the street or across the county and they're closing their doors, and we're going, did anybody know them? Like, did anybody bring them in the fold? Not just the chamber, but the community. I think what we need to do, not just the chamber, but our members do really well at bringing people in and making sure that they know that we exist. So we've been doing the Business Pod program for a little over 2 years now, and we just had our 400th entrepreneur sign up for the program. So we have an average. It's been an amazing program.
Yeah. Now here's a great question for Morgan. Morgan, thank you for asking it. She says, her clients are all virtual and outside her city. Will the chamber still help me?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's still things that you need. So if you're virtual, we always say by nature, the business community and even the broader community trusts and supports the Chamber of Commerce, right? So there's a grandma sitting out there that needs a plumber. She's going to go to the business directory online of the Chamber of Commerce and look for their plumber. It's the yellow pages now. So it's a trusted source. People know that it's not just searching the web, but you're trusting the Chamber of Commerce and the members that are a part of your local Chamber of Commerce. There's some validity there to it, right? In this internet age. So even if you have a virtual company, get onto your local Chamber of Commerce's website, become a member, because that alone, your SEO will go up, especially as closer the chamber is to your city center, right? Or your address, your local address is to the city center. There's a lot of opportunities to join your chamber. We also have entrepreneurs and others that are virtually that are reaching other communities, but how do you tie into your local community? How do you feel a part of it? And that's where your local Chamber of Commerce will come in. We want you to network. We still want you to serve on boards and meet people and get connected. That's really what the chamber is about, is connecting people. So similar to what we did at the golf tournament, Natalie, we saw somebody walk by, one of my board members, you have coffee, he has a staff. I'm like, hey, you need to meet, have your company out there. And he said, yeah, sure. Why not? That sounds great. That was easy. But we like doing those connections, but it's not just connections for business. It is getting to know the opportunities to impact the community in which you live.
Well, and you guys have a ton of workshops too, that, whether your business is virtual or not, it's good for the business owner to know, the economic trends, what's going on there, how to market, the SEO,
Mhm.
all kinds of topics that can be super beneficial.
Right. Minimum
Yeah.
wage. A lot of us chambers across the country, something that might be really difficult to wrap your head around. And a lot of businesses are like, I don't have time for this. Like, I just need to know how this minimum wage increase is going to impact me. But how do I pass it on to do I pass it on to my customers? Do I put it in my inventory? Like, how do I absorb that? Or do I just absorb that? So we can walk you through that and make sure that you're up to date on L&I essentials. So for us in the state of Washington, that's labor and industries. We pay workers comp through a different program. So how do you understand that? And how do you understand, even as an entrepreneur, you're going to think about growing, right? You're going to say, okay, I'm going to have an employee, but I don't want to have an employee. I'm going to contract them. No, no, no. Not oftentimes do you find adding an
Yeah.
employee is legally contracting, right? You have to understand what makes it a contractor 1099 versus an employee from what the state's going to view it, right? So
What
the state
makes it
might say,
possible for that person to be a contractor, that
mm-hmm,
Yeah.
needs to be in
yes.
order. And it's a common mistake.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
Yeah.
we want you to
Sure.
know that before you're going in and thinking about hiring, because then when you hire, yes, we know that hiring, you have a whole nother set of expenses. But
Mhm.
also there's a lot of great things that come with having a staff,
There's
right?
protections to it too, for
Protections as
sure.
well. Right.
Morgan has a follow-up. It says,
Okay.
do I pay for the services?
No, not oftentimes. So when you become a chamber member and the membership is pretty nominal, I want to say they start, it depends on around the country, but ours start at $475 for an individual, plus $15 for one person. So that's the owner. And then you get access to a whole host of resources.
That's per
You have
year?
per year. Thanks for asking. Yeah, it's per year. You have free access to a lot of the networking because they're complimentary, because we work with other organizations who want to host or show off their site. And there's people that want access to Morgans, and to meet a Morgan as well. So we make sure that there's opportunities that are easy to access and complimentary or at a very reduced cost. So definitely recommend seeing what's in it for you. And then sometimes it might be, I want to be a part of the government affairs and really take part in advocacy. Somebody might say, I'm an entrepreneur and I have a real passion, for others not going through what I went through. And some of these taxes I think should change or whatnot. Yeah, join or lend your voice to the Chamber of Commerce and our government section. So there's a lot of ways to participate and get active in the chamber. It's just reaching out and letting other people know. We have a lot of people who do spread the word. But we talked about, I think I think it was last week, we talked about companies that are 2 blocks away from us who don't know we exist. And when they find out, they're just like, I'm kicking myself. How did I not
Mhm.
know you were just a couple of
Mhm.
blocks away? So oftentimes we take it for granted that we're out there, that the community knows us. But we're trying to make sure that we get out into the broader community and not just tunneled in the downtown corridor, that there are companies and home-based businesses and others that
Yeah.
need this connection. And
Sure.
English as a second language organizations, right? So we have a need and some amazing professionals out there that we want to envelope into the broader business community. They're our supply chain. They're our customers. They are our community. And we need to make sure that they
Yeah.
all feel like they're part of that business community.
Yeah.
I,
And now, is there an option to pay your yearly dues monthly?
Yeah, we have quarterly and
Quarterly. Okay.
semi-annually. Yes,
Okay. Okay.
that's an
Perfect.
option to
right.
make it easy. And we have a lot of small businesses that do that. And we understand that.
Yeah.
Well,
It kind of helps spread it out.
Yeah.
let me start this question by saying we love David around here.
David,
Okay.
you're here. And there
But
he
Oh,
is.
okay.
I want to translate his question. So, you know, just like it would happen with any
Yeah.
other service,
Yeah.
sometimes you have a bad experience,
Sure.
right? So let's
Mhm.
just say that you have tried this, right? As
Yes.
an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you've tried your local chamber and
Yeah.
that was just not a fit, wasn't great. Do you have any other suggestions? Is there anything
Mhm.
around that would be complementary?
Yes, and I will take that in a couple different directions because I speak David. I get this. I get this question. And when I started the chamber around 5.5 years ago, before my first day, I went into a couple of friends' businesses that own shops and businesses in town. I'm like, hey, do you guys know your Chamber of Commerce? Are you part of the local chamber? And a couple of them said, no. They're a clique. I don't feel like I'm a part of them. And I was like, I don't understand what you're talking about. And then I'd go to the next one. They're like, I don't think I'm allowed in or something. I'm like, that's crazy because the Chamber of Commerce is an open membership. Like I didn't understand it until I started at the Chamber. And oftentimes what happens in a very good way is people become very passionate about their chamber, very passionate about the people are in there, and they get together and they're online and they're this and everybody sees it and they don't feel like they're not broadening the circle or making sure that it's a big tent. And oftentimes chambers can be viewed as a clique. And we heard that over and over and over again. And so what we had to do, because if you ask that clique, they loved it. Like, what's wrong with it? This is good. Don't touch us. This is the way we operate. But when you looked at what it was doing for the broader business community who was not participating, they need Davids, right? Davids are showing up to podcasts across the country. Like they need Davids, but they were unintentionally locking them out because they became tribal. They became cliquish, and we all want that tribe, but it's a conscious effort. And a lot of things that we do, listen, guys, we were around since 1890. We still had a lot of things that we formed back then that we carried into today. And we had that mentality of, oh, it's not broken. It's broken. You just don't know it's broken. And so we made a lot of changes. And I would say to the Davids, talk to your chamber, give an outside perspective, because we had that opportunity and we were like, yeah. I guess there's a lot of organizations not joining us because of this. And when we were able to strip away some programming and kind of do things more modern and more now what was demanding, it wasn't brick and mortar anymore, right? We're all at home, we're Morgans, working remotely. It was it gave us an opportunity to kind of rebrand, change ourselves. And one of the things that we did when we didn't become this visual clique, we started getting law firms and engineering firms and professional organizations and smaller entrepreneurs flocking in to join the chamber going, it's about time. So sometimes you just don't know it when you see it. And I just ask them to get involved and start being that change. But in a lot of our towns, something very not similar, but connection could be your Rotary, depending on what your Rotary system looks like. Ours is revamping. It's older, an historic institution, but they're also going through some changes and needing some blood. And it's a great way to get connections. And they do such good things for the communities they serve. So good way to get connected.
Yeah, for sure. And you don't know who someone else knows, for sure.
You don't. That's right.
And I remember being at one of the networking events and it was like, someone knew someone in the state that we were looking to do some work in. And it was like, bam, that contact was there that could help us. And that's sometimes the last thing you expect.
Yeah.
But it can be right there. And I think it's good when you are a virtual business and you are working from home to get out and not only, like you said, make those connections. You're creating your own community, but then also, like you had mentioned, giving back your talents too, or your passions, and seeing those through and feeling part of the community.
Absolutely. So we have programs for that. Like if an entrepreneur feels isolated and is at home and wants to give back, we have opportunities we call our board ready certification program, where you can go in and get comfortable serving on a board. How do you make those rules? How do I second emotion? What is the process? It can be daunting, and it's oftentimes what those in higher level leadership positions take on, because we do them at the state and the county, and we sit on boards throughout our region. But we oftentimes don't give people within our organizations or entrepreneurs an opportunity to feel comfortable serving, right? Their nonprofit, finding a way to have their meet their passion. I care about dogs and cats. I want to become a treasurer. So I think getting involved, but getting comfortable, those are workshops and things that we have for them as well, so that people can get involved in their community, but feel comfortable doing so.
So you're saying you can even teach them nonprofit governance, which is
absolutely, that's my background.
It's a big need out there.
It is a big need.
As a consultant to nonprofits, I can tell you.
Thank you.
Sometimes they're like, you guys don't know how to do this, right?
You don't know how to do this. And more so, Martin, it's like there's a lot of friction, and nonprofits and their staff or boards should not have friction, because when you have friction, you can't move your mission forward.
You're supposed to be working towards the same mission.
That's right.
Well, so I want to circle back to Morgan's question because there's like some discussion in the chat about
Yeah.
it. Um,
Oh,
but basically, the point to clarify, and you won't let me lie here, is that even if you have a business that works with out of state clients
mhm.
exclusively, right? As a business, you're part of that community and hence part of that chamber's area
Yeah,
of influence, right? So
yeah,
you
mhm.
should feel welcome
Absolutely,
as a member of that chamber, even if you're not directly working with people in the community, right? So just want
absolutely.
to make sure that that's clear for
Mhm.
everyone.
Yeah, we
So
have quite a few. We have quite a few members, and if you even want to meet other like individuals that are representing organizations, we have really large insurance companies where they might have remote, and their company joins, and they don't have to join at a big level because they're a massive insurance company. We can talk to you about a rate that's specifically for an individual that might be in the region, so that
yeah,
everything's accessible. Mhm.
yeah, just illustrating the point, make sure that everybody understands they're all welcome.
Yeah,
You did
everybody's
that great.
welcome. I will say we're not for everybody, right? Like we hope we see you, but if an organization wants to be everything for everybody, every now and then it might
You'll
not be a good fit.
you'll
But
not fit.
Yeah.
it,
So who would not be a good fit?
so it depends on your bylaws around the country. So we're all different. Those that have retired, in our bylaws is specifically because we're a business organization, what we try and do is create opportunities still for those that might have some institutional knowledge and value to still participate in some way. But we don't have a membership level for
Retirees.
retirees, and
Yeah.
that is different for every organization. And really it comes down to not just what the chamber wants to do, but it's literally written into our bylaws that govern our organization exactly what a member can be. So we try and find ways, but it's professionals and those in the community. So if you're a wife of somebody at home that your husband goes to work, and or vice versa, and you want to go to the events and everything, that's not it, because it really is a business organization, and we want to focus, and that's where we thrive, is bringing the
Right.
professionals together. But there's opportunities.
Right. But that basically excludes no one that is in
Yeah,
business,
yeah,
right?
Right.
Okay.
yes.
Right. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about programs, or I find it that it's really difficult for a business owner, and I think you touched on this a little bit. It's very difficult for a business owner to look at the menu of
Yeah,
stuff that they could learn and
yeah.
be like, I gotta learn this.
Mhm.
Do you have some sort of way for somebody to come in and get, like, for lack of a better word, an assessment, right, of
Yeah.
where they are with things, and have a guided conversation on, like, maybe you should emphasize or learn this thing?
Yes, and actually anybody who even if you join the membership online and go through our portal, you're meeting with one of our member relations managers. So our Chamber of Commerce, our Greater Vancouver Chamber, we have 12 employees, and that's 12 employees that are an extension of your staff. Right. So we built an office in downtown Vancouver that has a coffee bar in the middle and plenty of opportunities to sit and have conversations in different rooms. We have collab space that you can rent and plug in if you're an entrepreneur. We want to make sure we have hundreds of people coming in every week. Natalie was one of them yesterday, that come in and have meetings or staff meetings or one-on-ones with our staff. And we will ask you, what does it mean for you to be a member? What do you want? Because there's going to be things that you would never even thought about that you probably can't read on the screen, or it's part of another organization that we can make an introduction to as well. So it can be overwhelming, especially when you're a chamber our size and we have programs upon programs, but we can help you figure out what it is that you need. And you don't need to bite off all of it at once. It can feel daunting. We want you to
Mhm.
show up if you can, if it's part of what you do. Show up, kind of see it with your own eyes, meet the team. A lot of people walk out of our office going, I did not expect that. Or that was so much information. I didn't know you did that. And we're thinking, oh my gosh, we only went over 5 of our 25 programs, right?
Mhm.
So there is something in it for everybody, but we have 3 membership relations staff just on the Greater Vancouver Chamber, specifically designed to sit down with you by sector and say, what do you want? What do you need?
So along those lines, the way to find out what your local chamber can do for you is
Mhm.
probably that level of one-on-one, right? You probably wouldn't drive the same benefit, like I said, from just looking at the menu and
Right.
being
Yeah.
and trying to decide.
Yeah, and a lot of our smaller chambers across the country, if you have something you're looking, they might go, "That's a great idea. We'd never had the bandwidth, but if you're willing to participate or we can find some volunteers, we can add that." So that's another level of the conversation. So we have organizations that are like, "Hey, we want to show off our food." Well, we don't have a lot of opportunities to go to places, but
Mhm.
our membership relations staff thought about it and they're like, "You know what? I'm going to showcase your food at this event. I'm going to propose it and we'll see if it happens." And we did it. So there
Nice.
are ways to get creative and make sure like our goal is to have successful businesses. We need you connected. We need you around. We don't want you struggling or closing your doors because you didn't know a resource existed or another organization, or people are getting their supply chain in Nebraska when you're right down the street. And that's where we thrive is we want you to know that your supplier is right down the street and you've been ordering from across the country for the last decade, right?
Yeah.
So we want to go to these businesses and support these businesses, and we want to bring other businesses. We have pride in this community, and a lot of them. And that's what chambers of commerce produce, right? You go to a chamber of commerce, there's a lot of passion, but there's
Yeah.
specific passion around it because there's like a 63% more people, or I think the survey was like 63% of consumers viewed businesses who were part of their chamber of commerce more positively than not. And then when
I
you
can
get
see
to like a
that.
franchise level, it has an increase because a lot of people look at franchise and go, "That's not a local," but it's like a 40% increase to patronize that franchise if you're part of your local chamber of commerce. So there's a lot of trust built in to the chamber of commerce framework that I highly recommend getting involved in, because as you go to events like Natalie, you've been to them, people want to grab chamber members and let them know. We said it before. You don't think you're going to go through a divorce, but when
Right.
you do, you're going to have met 10 lawyers that you can call up, right?
Right.
You hope that you don't need a
You'll be
new
ready for your divorce.
but we want to create opportunities, right? That you might not know you need a plumber now. You're gonna refer it to a friend who had a flood, and you're gonna have met them at a chamber. And we had an individual when I first started. We had a company call. They had been a chamber member for a while, very small business. They're like, "You know what? I think I'm going to cancel my membership. I just don't. We don't get anything from the chamber."
Yeah.
Thinking, interesting. That's not good. Like, obviously you just don't know what we do, right? Or you haven't tapped into it, because I'm a
Yeah.
firm believer. You just don't obviously know the whole breadth of
Right.
what we can do for you. And we
Right.
need that conversation.
Yeah.
And so they left, and it was like 2 or 3 months later, they came back and they're like, "Yeah, we need to apply for the chamber." I'm like, "Why is that?" "That's weird because you just said, hey, see you later." And they said, "Yeah, we were standing in line somewhere and I was talking to a friend that I had met and it was my customer, and it was, and by the end of the conversation, I realized, yeah, I met them through a chamber event." So a couple of
Yeah.
those instances, they were like, "Okay." A couple of these customers I've had for the last 5, 10 years, because I met them at a chamber event, and it didn't dawn on them until that line when they're like, "Okay, I guess the
Yeah.
chamber is something." Now, if you're needing something like right away, yes, that happened for you, Natalie, on a couple instances when you have a connection, but it's a slow build. We have a lot of people who
Yeah.
are like, "It took me a year," but that one of our board members owns a insurance agency. He said the member that a client of ours that we met 5 or 10 years ago, I can't even remember how long, pays for his membership even to this day. He goes, "Everything else is just gravy."
Right.
So a lot of times we forget where you meet those people,
Right.
right? And how you cross
100%.
paths. Yeah.
So
100%. Yeah, this is a great one. So, yeah, the listeners kind of want to know,
Mhm,
is your staff professionally trained to really
mhm,
draw out what your needs are? Like you had
mhm.
mentioned, looking at their financials, looking at their marketing, or are they just employees?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So when we talk about the business pod training, we're using experts. They're not chamber staff, they're consultants that work with us. And the organization that we use are trained experts. They have 22 years in senior leadership at Intel Corporation that ended up forming their own business and teams, engineer and CPA by
Jen.
trade.
Yeah.
Jen, yeah, fantastic. And they have been instrumental. And so we hire and make sure that they're vetted, they know what they're doing, and we always have success stories in order to back that up. The chamber staff, our sales, our development and member relation, definitely some of the best that there is around there. Yeah, so it's something that we have a passion for, and we have a unique set of values that we look for, right? When we're looking for staff that want to support the community, but we're still a business organization, right? So it takes a certain individual, and we have an A+ team. Like your chambers are some of the most passionate people to support business and help business that there is. But
For
yeah, good
sure.
question on the business pod.
100%.
Sure.
So with the entrepreneurs that we have here, what would you say are the top 3 programs or the most popular programs? Sounds like the pod one is for sure.
Yes.
What are the other programs that people are like, wow, I didn't know about that one?
There's a couple because they have a mixed use. So our legislative events, most people are like, legislative events? Why would I want to go to a legislative event and sit next to a bunch of senators and representatives? One, they speak for you. That's why. And I think you need to understand that first on how the civics makes our community work and what we're advocating for. But like the first hour of that is like networking. It is a room full of 500-600 people seeing each other, and it's another way to get connected. So doing events and showing up at events, and it's a networking opportunity while celebrating business. The other one is every chamber across the country has business and leadership awards. They might be called a little bit different, but it's a way for us to celebrate business in their categories. Large business of the year, small business, startup. That's where a lot of our entrepreneurs will be. We want to make sure to celebrate. And I'll throw this out there because a lot of people do not take advantage. Please nominate people. I don't think people understand what a nomination, not just winning, but a nomination means to a small business or an entrepreneur who's in the first couple of years of their business, being recognized for it, and being recognized with an organization like our chamber who has such visibility and has such a megaphone. It can really bring you into a household name eventually. So you have that megaphone, you have that, and then you're showing up at events, and then you're getting business pod, and people start seeing you here and there and throughout the year. That's where you start becoming a known entity, and people will refer you, right? So we want to make sure people take advantage of that more. And then our business after hours, right? So it's for us, and I think just about every chamber around has them. Some do something before hours, or depending on their community and what the makeup is. We do business after hours on the second Tuesday of every month. Members are available to go, complimentary, and it can be, depending on the size of the place, anywhere from 200 to 400 professionals, some top level. So a lot of people think, I'm going to go, and there's just a room full of real estate agents and mortgage brokers. We do have amazing real estate agents and brokers that are there, but we have board members and high level and managers and a really great mix of people. And it's something that creates a lot of FOMO when people hear about it after the fact or forget to put it on their calendar. So I always recommend that through chambers across the country.
Yeah, little shout out from Harper and Gracie.
Yes. Yeah, Harper and Gracie. They're another amazing resource that you have. And how does a Harper and Gracie mobile drinkery with an amazing concept get introduced to the business community, right? So they join, they show up. We give them opportunities to serve their cocktails at some of our events. We have a women's leadership event that we do, so that people start to take notice. So we try and get creative, and we want to make sure people know that they're out there. If you're a mobile drinkery, if you're a caterer, if you're a restaurant, if you're starting up, we just had a business pod participant in about 10 minutes before we started. She's going through the business pod, and she's a caterer and wants to focus on lunches. beaches. Well, that's for the business community. So we made some introductions for her. And every time we do an event or a community does event, a catering list goes out to the community of chamber members who are caterers. So, so there are ways that we try and make sure that people know who you are and that you are one of their choices.
That's great.
What about, one of the things that I consider big misses for local businesses is usually there's sometimes grants, economic development money, there's county money. Like, do you guys help businesses get connected with some of those resources
We
that
definitely,
go sometimes unnoticed?
Yes, and that's a very good question, because we get asked almost on a weekly basis, where are the grants, where's the money? And we do. And a lot of times what we find, organizations don't pass them on because of competition. And that's where the chamber can come in, because we need everybody to have access to it. So when there's a grant out there for small business or different industries, we're going to let you know about it through all of our social media. So I would recommend follow the Greater Vancouver Chamber on all social media platforms, because we announce and our newsletters go out with all the grants, whether it's infrastructure grant or a small business or it could be anything. It will send it out through there in addition to an email that goes out. We also do a lot of culling of them. So we're the first stop for like the county and the city and other agencies that are giving out grants. They usually send them to the chamber first, because we can disseminate it wide. So so we'll get that. And as long as you're connected, and we're trying to get more and more people connected, and we have a Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, we'll send it as soon as we know about it, along with the deadline and any informational session. So yeah,
Do you
that's
help
very
people
important.
apply, or do
Yeah,
you?
we can sit down with them. I get asked, we get asked quite a bit. So
Because
and
it
it's
intimidates people.
it is. I mean, I am a
yeah.
regulatory person by nature, and I've been writing grants for 25 years. I
I
love it. I
heard
love
you're
the game.
amazing at it.
Yeah, I'm good at it. I like doing other things, but it's when you drill it down, you get it, but it can be overwhelming at first. So I think one, understanding the grant that you're going for. Do you even fit? A lot of people spend a lot of time applying for grants or trying to fit, a square peg into a round hole. It's not going to work. Not every grant is for you. And making sure that you understand not just how to apply, but can you actually fulfill the requirements? A lot of times we see that number and we're like, this is great. But one, they don't realize, oh, maybe you might have to spend $15,000 to get audited, right? And you didn't factor that in because the grant doesn't pay for that. So do you have that? And are you going to assume the risk of being audited and having to pay it back? Are you in a position? So oftentimes what we'll do, especially in our business pod, is we'll talk about, okay, is this grant right for you? Or maybe we should look at an SBA loan. So we have SBA lenders that we work with. Like, I don't know, Nally, if you've met her, Amy Price with Washington Trust.
Yes.
Right? They're one of
Talked
the
to her this
local
morning.
SBA banks. Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
So we know that when small businesses come in, they have to craft their loan request that can sometimes be better than a grant or the restrictions just right to get it. And oftentimes it has restrictions. You can't have already purchased the assets or there's certain things, and we want to get you before that starts. That's why when you talk about a business pod, we can help you get loan ready, grant ready, ready to meet the right person and say, grants are not for you. This loan is not for you. Maybe let's get you into a possible SBA line and make sure that you qualify. So there's a lot of different avenues for funding, and it can be daunting to even find them, let alone apply for them. So yes,
Yeah.
we're there to help, and that's part of what we really enjoy.
One of the other things that I've heard you talk about is an internship program.
Yes, thank you.
And that's a big thing for small businesses. First of all, because they never even think about it.
Right.
They, getting an intern
Right.
is not something that a small business is front of mind for.
Yeah.
And then it's overwhelming in itself.
Oh yeah.
It sounds like a big undertaking, right? Like,
It
I don't
does,
even know
yeah.
what I would have to do, etc. Right? So
Mhm.
tell me a little bit about your program.
Yeah, so we have a business and workforce development department. So we have a workforce and development director, Amy Tanska Ott, and she runs and facilitates the internship program. So we work with several organizations around town. Our workforce, WorkSource. We work with different programs that offer free internship funding for students or young adults of certain ages. We work with our different school districts in order to find out, okay, do you have a program that pays 120 hours? And so we
Okay,
can
and just
match.
just to be
Mhm.
clear, sorry to interrupt you,
Sure.
Janet, but just to translate for everybody, just to be clear, what that means is you will get an intern that is being paid for by a
Right.
fund
Yes.
outside of your business, right?
Yes.
So you'll get
Absolutely.
somebody inside your business that will help you out in a
Hmm.
particular area because that's the
Hmm.
expertise they're trying to gain,
Right.
but it'll be paid by for somebody else,
Yeah. So oftentimes some will say, oh, we don't mind, we can pay for it. And we have those opportunities as well
which
with
is
the
great
schools
too.
and universities, Cart College and WSU. And we chambers across the country do this as well to a certain extent. And then we might say, hey, the first 120 hours are paid. Will you match it with 120? Most of the time, it's like, absolutely. And most importantly, we've been working on establishing relationships to where you don't have to worry about the payroll, because that's the worst thing. Like, am I really going to add somebody for 3 months? It's a pain, and I do it every day, right? But it's like the last thing I want to do as a business or an entrepreneur, right? Of adding on payroll and dealing with all that. So we find vendors that work outside to take care of the payroll. So you're not touching it; they're paying them directly. So it's a really great way for you to get assistance and then kind of meet those people. And they can be from, it could be from WSU Pullman, right? Which is
Mhm.
across the state for those of you who are in New York and across the country. It's across the state, but what we're trying to do is make sure that they come back home. They come back home and have an opportunity to meet with a business, learn from industry experts. Hey, I might want to go into retail. And a lot of them, we have a huge percentage of people that are hiring their interns. And so just imagine when you were an intern or intern age and going into the business community was a scary thing and you didn't know anybody, but now you know somebody you interned for, they offered you a job. That's
100%.
a comfortable transition. And then for a
Mhm.
chamber of commerce, really our focus is a little selfish as well. We need a better business community in 10 years. We need a pipeline of individuals that are going
Mhm.
into our businesses that know how to show up on time, know about the expectations, might know that there's costs involved, right? And that they're introduced to the business community, can add value to it. So it's really developing our pipeline of professionals that can really make an impact as soon as they enter the workforce.
That's great. So one question I have, which is something that I've been challenged with, is as a woman business owner, becoming registered as a women business owner. There's
Mm-hmm.
benefits to that, but it can be like filling out a grant or
Mm-hmm.
starting an internship program.
Yeah.
It's completely overwhelming. Are there resources for that?
Mm-hmm.
You're
Yes, there
saying they
are.
make it hard for you to prove that you're a woman?
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's like a
It's a
loan
lot.
application.
It's a lot. It does come with its benefits, because when you're certified in anything, the contracts and the government
Yeah.
contracts and the state contracts and the local contracts are saying, listen, as a subcontractor or whatnot, you need to make 15% of the people that you hire of certified women-owned business or minority-owned business, et cetera. So there's an advantage to it that I definitely say take advantage of it. But we do have partners at Clark College and others that provide the classes and the expertise and individuals that help you do the certification. So it's a matter of us connecting you with them, because
Okay.
it's
Great.
a very important part, and you're doing it now for your future, right? So I would encourage anybody, take a look at it, talk to your chamber, talk with your organizations, and get prepared, especially if you're in an area of growth like Vancouver, Southwest Washington is. It's we're not going to be able to supply the workers that we need in order to grow this community. So the more that we have out there that are registered, that we know who to go to, and our contractors know who to go to and get introduced, it can be very beneficial for a small entrepreneur.
Perfect. That's wonderful.
Mhm.
Awesome. And Susan says, I love to see Chambers getting some love and attention. So this
Oh,
has been
thanks.
super informational and eye-opening to what is really out there.
Yeah,
And
and for
yeah.
our purposes, I think that the overarching message here and the important thing is you're not alone, right?
Mhm.
There are
Yeah.
Right.
things out there in just they're not obvious sometimes.
Right.
You gotta find the questions. You gotta find the answers to the questions you have, and
Mhm.
sometimes that takes a little like connecting, a little talking to people. And I think that that's what's worth it. It's worth
Absolutely.
going out there in the community and being like, do you have this, right? Or if you don't have it, who has it that I
Mhm.
can benefit from?
Yeah.
For a small business, it's it's easy to get isolated. It's easy to get
Yeah.
lonely. It's easy to get desperate even. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's the overarching message here. You know, it's not necessarily a chamber centric thing,
Yeah.
but it just happens to be a resource that's available for everyone, and that I
Absolutely.
think is a good one.
Great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
giving us an overview of what chambers can do for us and the resources. So, yeah, next episode is October 16th, 12 p.m. Portland time, PDT.
It-
And then we're going to be talking about business life hacks. So, technology, how to manage vendors, employees, things, softwares, tools, like
Mhm.
what's delicious. That's I always like those things that have changed my life.
business
So
life
yeah,
hacks, right?
yeah,
Mhm.
business life hacks. Yes. So we're excited to talk about that. Feel free to comment on this show, send us information, and we'll try and address and share your hacks that have worked so
Yep.
well. And Janet, how can we, if people want to get in touch with you or the chamber,
Mhm.
how can they do that?
They can email if you want to email and have us respond back to you, yourchamber@vancouverusa.com.
Okay.
Or you can connect with us on our social media platforms. We monitor that as well if you private message us. But yeah, we would love to
Perfect.
meet you. And if you're sitting there and you know a company or your friend owns a business or a retail and they've been struggling, let them know. I think that's what we want. It going through the business pod is free. It's complimentary. We just want to help sustain our business community. So if you can just take a moment and let people know that there's a resource here, we'll take it from there and find out if it's a good fit. It's usually a good fit.
Perfect. Wonderful. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Janet, again so much. Thank you for our listeners and the interaction and the great questions today. And always for David's humor. We love David's humor. So we will see you at our next show, October 16th. And we are looking forward to it. Until then, reach out to your chamber, see how they can help you.
Thank you. We'll see you
Perfect.
then. Thanks,
All
Janet.
right. Bye.